level of spending on those two categories among churches that are growing and compare it to A&M Methodist, let's see how well we match. And in fact, we matched poorly. We were not spending at the levels that the growing churches were. So we measured the difference. And we thought, what happens if we got a group of donors to fund that difference? From an economic standpoint, that's called an investment. We invest in brick and mortar all the time, but we don't often think about investing in programs or in staff in that way. So we did what we called a benchmark project. We raised, in our church, it was $68,000. We got a group just like this to see if, in fact, they would donate an extra $68,000 over and beyond their normal giving to the church as a pilot project, to see if, in fact, with that investment, we would get what we would expect with the econometrics of looking at all of these 32,000 churches for that many years. We could predict what the impact would be on worship attendance and on giving. And we did so. And the donors came, and the donors funded, not year one only, but in year two as well. And then we looked at our result. In our particular church, it wasn't going well. And that was the blessing for us, because we weren't hitting our mark. And that created an interest among the laity to figure out why. And we started looking at everything in the church to try to figure out, we're spending money to turn this thing around. We were in decline, and we couldn't figure it out, but in time we did. And in time we stopped our decline, and now we're growing. And the beauty of the project was our growth has been faster after the project has been over. It's been 4 years now, and we're setting records in growth. And I believe it was because of the benchmark project that we set the platform by which we invested in some critical ministries that we believe was related to growth, and it worked. But it set a culture in the church that I had not seen before. And in fact, I've been there since 1979, and I have never seen the culture like this. There is excitement in the church, and we're old people. We're not supposed to get excited. But the excitement was among the laity, and there was an expectation of growth that I had not seen before. There was an expectation of giving that I had not seen before. I've never seen a finance committee be as confident of ending the year in the black, even though we had our largest deficit in September in the history of our church. But we turned out in the black because we had confidence in the laity and in the church. So, with that, we decided perhaps we can stop the decline in the Texas Annual Conference. It worked in our West District. We stopped our decline there. So we made a partnership with the bishop and the annual conference to be a part of the strategy to reverse our decline in the Texas Annual Conference and have it to be perhaps the first annual conference to reverse decline in these United States. And that's what we're trying to do. We're selecting 25 churches, strategic churches, with the intention of implementing the benchmark projects in 25 churches, you're one of those, or 20 churches, and you're one of those, to reverse our decline. The blessing for you is growth in your church and a change in the culture. Now let me tell you a little bit about donors. This was new for us. I mean, A&M Methodist was a pilot church. Christ in College Station was a pilot church as well. And we had a gathering just like this. And we asked our people if they would go over and beyond a second mile giving, over and beyond their normal giving patterns, to pledge a supplement to the budget to repair this spending deficiency as we're compared to other churches, and to do that for 2 years. That would be an investment. And we would do so in programs and in staff. And I had to be, I guess. I had to be one of the donors because it was my project, so it would look bad if I didn't. But I was among 12 families. And I can tell you, and I've been a Methodist for a very, very long time. And I've been good. I have given to the church. I've responded to capital campaigns on every time they've been there, renovation projects, capital gains for renovation of buildings and building a new building. I've done all of that. But I have never had the excitement that I've had as a donor in this project. There were 12 of us, and I didn't know them until we had our first meeting, when we were meeting with the staff and the volunteers of the ministries that were chosen to be funded. And I didn't know how that would work out, but we had the meeting, and it lasted an hour and a half. And the way we schedule this is the donors meet with the staff and volunteers that are administering the money in the selected ministries that are chosen. We meet every 6 months. And we had it in my living room, and it lasted an hour and a half, and it was incredible. I've never been able to sit down with the leaders of some ministries and had that much time for them to explain what they're doing and some of their successes, some of their failures, and to get the interaction with them. And I looked at their faces, and they were excited because it was the first time in their church work that they had a group of people that would listen to them for an hour and a half. Usually they get 3 minutes before a church council meeting, and that's it. But here are some interested people, the donors of the project, that wanted to know how things are going. And it worked beautifully. We felt good because we got to interact with the very people that were working on those chosen ministries. They were affirmed because there were 12 families that wanted to hear how things are going. And there was a fellowship that was developed there. In the second meeting, it was even better. We had the staff was ready for the meeting. And it was the best report I have ever heard of a staff member in a local church in my life. I understand that she worked on the report for 2 weeks before she presented. And it was outstanding. So the relationship that developed between the donors and the staff and volunteers was rich. And it was affirming to both groups. And in looking back, I don't know of any opportunity I've ever had like that, where I'm part of a group that is investing in programs and staff for the purpose of growth. And the growth that we've had is incredible. We won the Copeland Award and the annual conference for our growth. We are setting records for growth. And when I look back at all of the capital campaigns I've responded to, all of the pledge cards I've filled out for supporting the operating budget, I don't think I have ever, I know I haven't, felt as confident and pleased with what happened with that investment as this one. The growth that we're seeing, the confidence that we have in our church, and the change in culture. And I was proud to be a part of that. It was an opportunity that had never come before. I've never been asked to do anything like that before. And it was unique. And I would do it over and over and over again. It is a rare event when a group of donors are given the opportunity to meet every 6 months with the staff and volunteers that are administering to those ministries that have been chosen as the catalyst for growth in a church such as yours. After it was done and the pledges were all in, we had other people that heard about it and they wanted to be donors too. But it was already closed. We had already had our money fully funded. And then the donors are there for 2 years to meet with the staff and the volunteers. So we had people that wished they were there, but they didn't come to the dinner, and sorry. But it was an exciting time and still is an exciting time. I've never seen a culture like we have developed. And we weren't supposed to because we're old. When I go to a church council meeting, I go in there and I see people that I do not know. And it is refreshing to know that you don't know the new leaders, because in the old days I knew them all. And now we have so many new leaders that I don't. But anyhow, that is part of my story. I think we have, here we go.
Thank you, Don. Let's say thank to Don. He has a couple of associates with him, Scott and Dean back there as well, and we've met them. And Don, of course, came in and they did the analysis of our church, and you have that in your fact sheet there in the Benchmark Project fact sheet, that we have this deficiency of spending about $121,000 for program expenditures and $45,587 for non-clergy staff expenditures. So that sort of shows you where, that's why Don was up here. He was trying to share with you the reason why the program developed, benchmark program was developed, and where the data comes from. And so it's, again, looking at the growing churches that are our size and how do we compare to those on these things. So that's where my part comes in. I, as the senior pastor for the last 4 years, have been trying to restructure things. We've been trying to be good stewards with all of our funds. We've been trying to do more with less, and that's very important, to be good stewards of our money. And so we haven't replaced some staff, and we haven't actually, we've taken money away from program ministries, and we've tried to do the best we can with less. But at the same time, we've also seen our growth sort of begin to flatten out. Some of that, I would say, has to do with where are we spending money, and we've had deficiencies in spending. And so that's where the benchmark program came in. Why do I think it's important? I think it's important because the data shows it. I also think it's important because we, about 2-3 years ago, spent a lot of time working on the mission and the vision of the church. But not everybody knows the mission and vision of the church. Not everybody works towards the mission and vision of the church. And this is a way to help us proclaim the mission and vision of the church again. That we want to connect people to Jesus, and we're serious about it. And so we need to do something different. We need to get outside of our walls in a different way. But part of to be able to do that, we need some extra money to do that. And so can't just change our entire church spending habits at the moment, as we've tried to back off. And so we look forward to having some possible expenditures towards growth. And so that's kind of on the fact sheet. You can see that. And I'm going to have Josh Fox and Kristen Leard come up here. They are basically our co-chairs for the JW Benchmark Project. Kristen is the vice chair, basically, of our church council, and Josh is our lay leader. So if you don't know them, but we're going to welcome you up to the stage here, and they are going to tell you why they think it's important that we actually go down and do this venture as well. So hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, everyone. We are very excited to get to this place and to have you all here. I am Kristen Leard. I'm the vice chair of the church council. My husband David and I have been members for about 3 years now, and we have loved getting to know the life of the church.
And I'm Josh Fox. I started on SPRC about 7 years ago. So through the transition, the fire, was chair of the SPRC. I'm currently the lay leader of the church. My wife, Karen, serves in Stephen Ministry and in children in JW Kids in a number of capacities. And we've got 3 little girls that run around the church all the time. Marty asked us to share why we were interested in this when he asked us to be chairs. And so I thought about that a little bit. You know, Don came to a leadership meeting and gave the same kind of presentation. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that hit me when he first talked to us about it. So I get excited about being able to get in the trenches with people. And when I think about what our mission of this church is. It's to connect people to Jesus. I can't think of a better way to connect people to Jesus than to find a way to get them in our doors. And we spend a lot of energy and a lot of time doing a lot of things. But if we put all of that energy and effort into getting people in the doors and truly giving them an opportunity to know the good news that we all know, it would have a major impact. And I want to share a little story about Harvey. Harvey happens. It's a tragic event. But a group of us get together and we drop everything we're doing. And we're in the trenches, in people's houses, day after day, mucking houses. Nobody's complaining about losing tools. Nobody's complaining about who moved this here. Nobody's complaining about anything other than sharing the love of Jesus. That was an unbelievable ministry opportunity. But we can do the same thing with sharing the good news about Jesus. And I'm not suggesting that Harvey wasn't sharing the good news, but we can put that same energy. And I know when I'm doing that kind of work, elbow to elbow with people in this room, I'm at the happiest I possibly can be. Now, I also, because I've served on a lot of committees, I've heard for the last 7 years, we can't do this because of the budget. And I understand being fiscally conservative is extremely important. And I'm not suggesting that we don't want to do that in any way. But what I am suggesting is it does change the mentality. You might have a children's minister that goes, you know what, I don't think I really want to go do that because we don't have the money for it. If I ask, they're probably going to say no. You might have a youth minister that feels the same way. You do that year over year over year over year, and you have a different thought process. This is a really cool opportunity to maybe flip some of that thought process. It may not be all of the answers, but I'm on board with trying anything I can to get more people in the door and share the good news of Jesus.
Great. As a person who's been on a church staff before, I agree with what Josh said very much about church budgets and working within the operating budget and how that is so important. But it's hard for the staff. It's hard for them to manage the budget and then want to do the things that they really want to do. And we have an opportunity to possibly bring in another non-clergy staff person, which would just bring in a whole new dynamic for the staff, for the congregation, for children or youth or whomever. That would just be a great addition to what we have going already. Someone's fresh ideas, new thoughts, things they've done in the past, or things they have gifts and talents for that we don't have here at John Wesley. So that was something, thinking about the non-clergy staff person that we could hire was something that really struck me. Our staff works very hard and is very budget conscious, and that's fantastic because you have to be. But giving them an opportunity to get excited about something and work together and work with a group of people that are invested and want to be a part of it would just bring an incredible amount of life to the church staff, to the pastoral staff, and to the congregation and the families at John Wesley. I think it would also, the community that surrounds John Wesley would see the energy, and they would feel the energy and want to be a part of what's happening at John Wesley. So that would be the main bonus.
So we've already done some work. Some of you probably attended the May 11th meeting, but we had a May 11th brainstorming meeting because this can't just be the people in the room. It's got to be something that's bought by the entire church and got to be something the entire church gets behind. On top of that, there's really smart people in this church that have really great ideas. So we had a brainstorming meeting. It had about 50 people at it. We got those 50 people by reaching out to ministry leads and to Sunday school leads and say, hey, who's your brainstorm folks? Who's the people that are really going to have a lot of ideas? And through that, we ended up having a meeting. And I guess if you want to go ahead and put the pictures up of that meeting, Kristen can tell you a little bit about how we structured it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, but we worked very hard for about 3 hours. And we got ideas out in front of the people. We brought structure to those ideas, and we filtered out what was good, what we were looking for, and got things moving to the best ideas to the top, and have sent them on to the staff and to Marty to look through. But these were some great ideas that came from people in this room and 50 other people in the congregation from all various ministry areas and different backgrounds and different ideas and thoughts. And you can tell from the pictures that you saw, it was a lot of work.
So the cool thing was the energy in the room was amazing. People, when you get to say, hey, what do you have? What's your thoughts for this church? How could we grow the church? People get really excited. And if we can find some ideas that really engage everybody and create that level of excitement, I think that the feeling that Don was talking about experiencing in their church, we'll experience it here. So Marty's going to give us some of the concepts that filter to the top through this meeting. The work's not done. It doesn't mean that this is the final ideas. Hopefully we have about 30 more days to kind of settle in on where we're going to head with this on the exact ideas. But Marty's got the concepts that filter to the top from that meeting.
Thank y'all. Let's give these two a round of applause. Appreciate them. That's great. Well, I'll try my best not to bore you. I don't have that long up here. I'm just going to try to breeze through a few things. That question that has been resonating with me is how much, basically, what is the faith of the next generation worth to you? That's something I heard at a conference, at the Drive conference. What is, the faith of the next generation worth to you? And it should be everything. It should be everything. It shouldn't just be, well, hopefully it all works out. Great, but God has planted us here, and we've been here almost for 50 years as a church, a gathering of, believers. And so it's so vitally important for us to actually continue to grow. And so church is not all about just growth. But when you look at and we analyze who's missing, there are some people missing. And it's our target audience, young, educated families who are far from God. Those folks are missing. They're just not a plethora of youth and not a plethora of children in our church. And we've done our best to turn some things around and get some dynamic energy going. But I think we've sort of plateaued. And so some of that has to do with this entrepreneurial spirit. Can we go out and just do what we need to do? But we can't do that if we've hit the ceiling of our budget. And so in order for us to connect more people to Jesus, we've got to do something different. We've got to get outside of ourselves, and we need to reach beyond our church walls into the neighborhoods, the schools, communities, the places we work. Okay? And so I got some ideas that came through at our meeting that I'm just going to share with you. 4 things. 2 that have to do with staff and 2 that have to do with ministries, okay? And they are big and audacious, and they're a little wild, and then there's plenty of other, like Josh said and Kristen said, there are a whole slew, a list of things. If something's not working and we want to change it, there's a whole bunch of ideas that we came up with as well. But as I analyzed and we talked about some things, I want to just share some of these amazing opportunities with you that I think should be sort of our first 4 things that we run after. So the first is this. An opportunity for a block party tailgate ministry, okay? And you're going to think, what the heck is that? Well, a tailgate block party is basically a community celebration in a neutral environment designed to establish relationships that intentionally connect people to Jesus by sharing the gospel through intentional relationships, again, and that provide follow-up by linking these attendees to a church. How does that happen? You might live in a neighborhood that I'm never going to set foot in. Why don't you throw a block party? And the church sponsors that block party. We have the ability to set up Tailgate USA. We're going to provide food and drinks and paper goods and an entire team to publicize it, and invitations and church materials and a volunteer team who knows what they're doing, and again, get outside of the church. Now, maybe your kids at a local school love to do football on Friday nights, or maybe they're on the drill team or a cheerleader or whatever. Why not throw a tailgate party before the game from your church, right? John Wesley tailgate opportunity, right? And so you got whatever you cater, hamburgers, hot dogs, barbecue, whatever it is, and get out amongst the people so people know we're here, so we can share the amazing, great things that we have going on at this church. If you look at things, there's a lot of energy going on and dynamic things going on, and then people go, where are you located? You know, who are you? That type of thing. And so block party, tailgate ministry, and then here's another one. Another opportunity is a satellite church service. Maybe once a month, where we actually find a location. There's tons of like banks that went out of business up where I live. Maybe there's somebody that would let us rent that, right, for a few days, and we can promote that we're going to be doing this church service, and maybe we do it on Thursday night. They say that's big for millennials, right? Maybe we do it on a Saturday night, you know, for young families. Maybe we do it on a Sunday night. Wherever it is, we spend an entire month publicizing, setting up. We have a children's thing going on at the same time. We have a worship service. We have a band. We have musicians, whatever. And we have a church service that just basically pops up. And we don't have to buy anything, right? We don't have to be there for a long time, but you might have an area that has young, educated families who are far from God that you feel like you can reach and you want to be a part of. And so it gets John Wesley, UMC, out there. So you got two huge ideas. You understand the change of time and effort too? We need teams that actually would say, how do I get people to go to that, right? Or how do I publicize that? Or how do people know, like, what door to go through, right? I mean, we still have the problem here. Where do you go in? Some guy walked in today and said, where do I enter? You know, I mean, he wasn't quite sure, right? And so if you're trying to reach people who've never been to church, or maybe people that have and they've fallen away from church, where do they go in? So it's a mindset that goes beyond where we're at, and it's this idea of targeting those people that is our target audience. Okay, here's a couple of staff things, and I'll wrap it up. A director of social media and digital content was one of the big, huge things. We kept talking about how people didn't know we were here. We didn't have enough content. We didn't have enough storytelling going on of what we have going on at our church. We didn't have enough social media leverage going on as well. And so I just sort of wrapped it all up in a job description of director of social media and digital content, somebody who actually produces the content, somebody who implements a social media marketing plan, somebody who targets the target audience. It has a website development, it has media content development, promotion development strategy, and engagement. Now, some of the money, one person can't come up with a full plan, but we can take some benchmark money and help that person hire a firm that maybe does something like that, and then they execute that plan. So, and then the last one that just sort of floated up to the top that's would be huge for us is a JW Kids large group MC. Basically a master communicator for kids during their large group gatherings. We have Priscilla Novak, who's our director of JW Kids, and she does a marvelous job and organizes everything, and she is a great leader for our church, but she can't be the person up on stage all the time. So we have some of the dads in here that are those communicators for our large group, times for our kids, but they can't do every single one of those. And so there's a lot more opportunities just than Sunday morning, and this person would be that. And we've heard that is a great niche with folks so that people go, wow, have you been there? Have you heard the gospel shared with the kids through that way? I mean, that would be awesome. I want my kids to go do that. So that's basically the four huge ideas. And they're actually, as I think about them as a senior pastor, thinking, holy cow, to actually have an entire church service at another place, that would be amazing. That would be a lot of work. To be able to have a tailgate party or a block party in my neighborhood with my neighbors who don't go to church or they say they're Christians, or I don't even know if they're Christians, would they come to a block party? So they could see some videos of our church on the screen, and we could share the love of Christ just through relationships, so they know that we are for them. That's the big thing, reaching out in the community. People need to know that the church is for them, not against them. And so that would be a part of this. And so These are marketing strategy ideas, reaching out to young families, increasing current family ministry stuff that we do here, and just in heightening that and have more dynamic opportunity on Sunday morning and other large group things. So that is basically the ideas. I could go on and tell you about 4 or 5 other amazing other ideas that we've had that would reach out and go beyond that, but I think it's time just for question and answer. And if you would look at your fact sheet that we placed there, if Josh and you guys want to come up, and Josh is going to walk around. If you have a question, we're all going to try to answer those. Don might need to pipe in too if needed. But so on your fact sheet, you have the purpose for the benchmark project and a summary there. And Don explained that. I explained that a little bit. The benchmark project for this, what is the executive? Hello. Okay. So you'll see the executive summary there and the patterns of those top growing churches that are our size, our affinity, our geographical area, in the sense of similar geographical area, and the program expenditures, the deficiencies, and the non-clergy staff deficiencies that we would hope to raise through the donors for the 2-year period. And you can see a little bit more about that, and we are hoping an additional, they say additional 110 attendees, which would be a huge growth push. You know, last year we had almost 50 new members, and that was a huge push for us, and that was great. And those folks have impacted our church in so many amazing ways. What is required of the donor? You have this on the back, 2-year commitment. Donors will receive progress updates on the funded ideas, of course, 4 face-to-face meetings, and then the final spending plan will be shared with the entire church, because we want to keep the entire church in the know of this, but also with the appropriate committees and with the donors. So questions about anything? I'm going to come down here. Raise a hand, or Josh can come see you. Well, if it works.
It does. The amount, it would be a donation each year. So, the question was, is the amount for 1 year or both years? And so it would be an equal amount in both years.
So the example that we've been given on that as well, we would love for 2 years, that's the program, that's the hope, that if for some reason we have financially can absorb part of these expenditures into our budget for 2020, okay, then we would go back to the donors and we would say, okay, it looks like we've absorbed $50,000 of that. We don't need you, you know, this is the amount that breaks down to, and per your percentage of your giving. And I think Don had talked about that, and all the donors said, no, we're going to give the whole thing still for another year. And they had absorbed that money, but that gave them extra money that they open up to ministries to say, hey, come up with a big dream idea and come and present that, and we'll give you an extra $20,000 for your budget this year. So that's just, you know, a spectacular example, actually. Yes. Anybody other questions? All right.
As I understand, this is, in a sense, a completely independent project outside the normal operations of the budget in the church. So this is another group that's sort of, in a sense, operating independently, using our entrepreneurial spirit, trying different things to grow the church. Is that sort of right?
The funding would be independent of the budget, but ultimately it's going to be the staff and ministry leaders of maybe new ministry teams or whatever that are making those decisions and such. So if you're the donor, you just get the report back. I guess that's a great way of saying that. So.
Okay, Barty, I got a couple of questions
Yes.
here. Does this mean that the monies will be held until 2022 and not be spent in the meantime?
No, I think the monies will be spent once we receive the money and we start. So in July, our goal is if we have some donations come in and we say we have the whole 166,000, then we will actually begin spending that. So.
Second question, are all the projects already chosen, or are you still looking? And
well, you can answer that.
So
as well.
The answer is that all the projects aren't chosen. I think Don said it best when he said that they did their first year and they figured out things weren't working the way they wanted it to, and they were able to reassess. This is more about change in mentality, and I actually wanted to say this a little while ago, it would have been so cool to be at this church when it started. To be at the handful of families that are meeting in a completely different location, meeting in a strip mall, and allow this thing to explode. And this is that mentality built into a nutshell, right? It's literally saying, hey, let's go do some things. Let's run after them really hard. If they don't work, let's go run after something else really hard. So they're not completely chosen. I think we're moving towards direction on some of the projects, but there will be a lot of movement. And hopefully the people in this room will be involved in that movement.
And all the projects are not chosen. They just have to be projects that are going to produce growth. So projects that produce growth aren't always projects that we would do here at our church because no one knows you're here. So that is an issue that we struggle with. And so we need to go to them to get them here. And that's, but we need to do that in a way that reaches those folks that when they do come here, they go, this seems like a home for me, you know, and not, oh my gosh, who are these people? And then they run away because it's not their fit. And again, that sounds creepy weird when you talk about target audiences, but you know, we did some work on that in the last couple of years, and it's important. So, yes, sir.
What pledge level would you need to have before you started the programs? Would you need the total 166? Say?
Oh, the total immediately?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. So.
And I'm talking about pledge level, not actual.
Right. We're we will have to analyze all that. That's the behind the scenes stuff. So, yeah, and depends on how much we bring in or pledges that we're getting that we would say, yeah, well, we'll throw that idea out, you know. So that's, you know, so. Again, you guys, people who are donating we're not really telling you the ideas tonight to sell you on the ideas. You're not really giving to an idea because these ideas could be, all four of these could be a complete flop. But it's giving to the ability to say as a church, we want to be able to invest in growth, and we're going to try some stuff, and we're going to see what happens. But, I mean, we're doing this is pretty good research and educated guesses. So, I mean, we're not just throwing stuff out there totally. You know, this is important stuff. So, yes.
Do any of these projects have any data of success from other churches that have attempted the projects?
Like from the standpoint of best practices of the four that we talked about, I would say, what is the stat? Majority of, when you talk about a satellite church without investing in an entire new satellite startup, but majority of new church start attenders in the last 5 years are 35 years of age or younger. So if you start something new worship service, off-site, new satellite campus, things like that, if you start a new church, you're going to reach your target audience. You're going to have 35 years and younger folks is what the current data says. New additional church campuses see 170% faster growth than their current campus. So there you go. I mean, it kind of just more people connected to Christ meets your, you know, so that would just be the satellite thing. Social media, y'all know how, I mean, all companies, I mean, if they're not doing social media stuff, and we really aren't. So we have a Facebook page and such, but we really aren't doing that, so.
Marty?
Yes, sir.
I've heard when Don House came and made this presentation originally to the church council, Don, you talked about how changing the culture, how when you don't have the money, people become negative and withdrawn and say, no, we don't have the money, we can't do that, good idea.
Right.
And so would you talk a little bit about how the church culture changes when you have a program like this?
Sure. We were in decline, and we didn't know why. And our budget really was in a plateau, but the attendance was falling, which was kind of an unusual situation. But our finance committee was, as most finance committees, very attentive. Sometimes they would suggest mid-year, let's reduce the spending down if we can, because we want to end the year in the black. And things were before benchmark was just as usual. I mean, the committees met and had our core leadership team that would meet, and there was kind of an unwritten rule that no meetings should last longer than an hour. And if they did, then they would blame someone for not being well prepared. But that was church for us. But after benchmark, the laity started getting very interested in the church, mainly because we were missing our marks, and we were trying to understand why. And that was our blessing, is not doing well. And that's when people started looking around to see what was going on. We had volunteers that were coming up and saying, I think we need informational signs as an example. And we didn't have a budget for it, but they raised it and got the permission from trustees. And all of a sudden we had informational signs, the flat screens throughout the church. We had some ladies that went over into the old Lutheran property that we had bought where the college kids met and looked at the bathrooms, and they were worse than a bus station in a big city. It was horrid. And those ladies took it upon themselves to fix it. We had in our Sunday school classroom a hole in the wall that had been there for 10 years. Someone came in and fixed it. And it was interest in the church and a kind of a recognition that we're better than this. And they started looking at all of the things that maybe was not being done well. And it energized the laity. As an example, we were meetings once a week at Cracker Barrel, not as a committee, but just to discuss what's going on in the church. And that spread. And what it did is it ignited the interest and the love of the church among the laity. And what happened, we did stop our decline toward the end of the project. But after that, the growth started. And there was a confidence that was gained. The finance committee was no longer being the administrator and the warning of signs. It was an enabling committee. We set a record in September for the largest deficit in the history of our church. But there was never a consideration of any members of the finance committee that maybe we ought to slow our spending, because they knew at the end of the year we would be in the black, and we were. There was a confidence. Now, our peak had been 900, and that was several years ago in worship attendance. And we dropped down to 550. And now we're at 700. And there is every confidence that we will reach 1,000. The only question is, how many years will it take? But there is nobody in the church that in leadership positions that believes that we're going to hit a plateau and this party will be over. What we did with our money, you heard that the donors in the second year were asked for only half of what they had donated in the first, because half of it was absorbed in the operating budget. But they all unanimously wanted to give the same amount again. We ended the project, the 3-year project, with extra funds. We had over $50,000 that we had not spent. So what we did to keep the entrepreneurial spirit going is we created with that and matched some more money, a dream fund, to where we could use it to help fund ministries through grant applications from all the ministry areas were invited to do it, to where their budget might be $6,000, but it could be $26,000. It could be $36,000 if you have good ideas. What had happened over the years is the finance committee, when you look for your budget for the next year, there was an implicit request, don't ask for more money because we don't think we'll have it. Well, when your ministry leader of, say, youth, has been told implicitly, don't ask for more money, year after year after year, you have shut down the ideas. They will never dream of a project where they might need another $20,000 to try something because it won't be there. But with Benchmark, it was there. And then we kept the Dream Fund funded to where it was always there. And we had the first year, I thought we might have 3 or 4 grant applications. We had 24. Now, some of them were really bad ideas, but there were some good ones, and we funded them, and they worked. And the next year, we had another series of applications, and ministry areas got subsidies of large amounts and small amounts, but tried to get the ministry leaders to think outside the box and be entrepreneurs again. And it has worked. And that has in part changed the culture because there is nothing we can't do. Whereas before we were in decline and we were worried about the budget and we wouldn't even consider a capital campaign for a new building because we wouldn't need it. But we had a renovation. You know how renovation campaigns go. You don't get anything new. And who gets excited about HVAC unless it's the summertime and it didn't work? But we had a campaign for renovation. And we thought maybe 200,000, maybe 300,000. 1.6 million was pledged. It was unbelievable. And now we're looking at, we have a visioning committee. We've got the authority from the church council to approve this, to think of tearing down all of the buildings from the old Lutheran property and build a new building. We're not looking at 5 million. We're looking at 30 million. The largest project we've ever had in the past was 2.5 million. And there is that confidence in the church now that did not exist before. And the growth is incredible. So far, we've had 74 new members, and we think we're going to hit 150 new members by the end of the year. We're not supposed to do that. With average worship attendance of 700, to have 150 new members in 1 year? And our real problem, what we discuss, and also our CLT meetings, you know the 1 hour rule? We go 2.5 hours now. And if you don't leave the meeting quickly and get in your car, it'll continue in the parking lot. And there's no controversy. People are excited about the ministries of the church as I have never seen before. That's the culture.
Thank you. Thank you. I just spoke with his senior pastor the other day at annual conference for the 2 hours that I spent there at annual conference, and that's the truth. So anyway, but he was. I said, "So how's it going? How was Benchmark?" And he said, "Boy, it changed. It changed the culture, you know." And then you actually have 91 new members this year already. That's pretty good right there. I said, Preston, man, that's pretty good. He's a great young guy, great pastor. So cultural change, those type of things. We are spending less in a lot of areas than we've ever spent before, and we're trying our best to do that. And people say, well, why don't you just take off of over here? Well, if you want to be the one who walks into several staff members and says, yeah, you just don't have a job tomorrow, that doesn't help morale. That doesn't help dreaming anything up. And so we're trying to stay away from that, but to infuse the ability to say, okay, the children's ministry just doesn't have this, they have have this, and they want to go out and reach, some folks in different ways. That's kind of what Benchmark is. So that mentality. So appreciate Don's words.
So Marty, Table
Yes.
10 pointed out that the number on the first page, it doesn't say whether it's annual or for the 2 years. That's an annual number. Yes. So that's the gap each year as opposed to a 2-year gap.
Again, a little bit different program than we've ever heard about, ever done before, and that Don has sort of launched and come up with. And we're one of those churches because we have that potential. We were at 900 worshipers at one time. That's been, 25 years or so? And so we know we can do that. We can handle it here on our campus, actually. And they didn't even have another service in between going on at that time. So that's a possibility, but a lot of times people don't know we're here, and anyway, and all the great things that you've established and have going on here. So we got to figure out ways to get that out into the world, our communities. So, well, that's it's about time, and of course, you can always call, you can always text, email, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to say that on your table, there is, if you want the centerpiece, you can donate money for that. People always do that at galas and dinners. So anyway, if you want the centerpiece, take it home with you, and don't leave $5. At least leave 20 or 50 or something like that. That'd be great. But there's also a pledge card. And we are hoping to have all the pledges in by July 7th, okay? That is the deadline. So I would ask you to pray about this, think about this. I know this goes above and beyond. This is second mile giving, and we know that's why a lot of y'all are sitting in the room, because you feel like you can, you're interested in something like this, or maybe God's calling you to this. That's great. But we would love for you to be a part of this, and we want to do some amazing things that go above and beyond where we're at. And so we appreciate all those that would like to be a part of this, and we hope, again, to have all this back in, in a month. And so from this time, so that we can begin to utilize this for the growth of our church. And there are other people that are interested in this as well. They couldn't be here tonight, so we will be informing them as well, and they'll be a part of this opportunity, this special group. So, all right. Well, I'm going to close this out, and you can have conversation. You can ask more questions if you want to people. There's staff people at your table. There's others. There's leaders in our church as well. So you have the pledge cards there on your table. You have the fact sheets on your table and all that, and we would love, please turn those in. You can give it to us personally, mail them in, or however you want to drop it by the office. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Gracious God, you've called so many of us in this church to go and make disciples and to connect people to Jesus. And each and every one of us in here should be excited about that. And we should care about the next generation of believers, children and youth and young families. And so I just pray that as you stir hearts in this room to possibly go above and beyond a second mile gift, we pray that you bless the stirrings in their hearts. And then as people give, we ask for a blessing upon those. We know that you return that back in so many different ways. And Lord, this church is mighty, and it's amazing, and you continue to do amazing things here, and will continue to do amazing things through your ministry at John Wesley United Methodist Church. And so we pledge ourselves and our church to continue to grow your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you again for being here. I'm so privileged to be your pastor, and thank you all for being here tonight.